influential podcast for anyone and everyone involved in the building industry. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Tool Shed podcast. As you are aware, if this is not your first time at the podcast, we're always trying to find people with philosophies, with services, with platforms, with tools, with ideas to help make the builder's life easier. Now, one of the biggest costs and biggest frustrations for any builder, in fact, any small business, is the hiring, getting the right team members, and when you've got a good team member and they leave, it can be very, very costly. It can be very, very costly if you hire the wrong team member. So it's really important to have the right mindset and a great process to be able to identify who the right people are for your business, and then have a process to get them into your business and maintain a good relationship with them. So in this episode, I'm speaking to Fletcher Wimbush in the US of A, and there he is. There's Fletcher, and he's got the Australian flag over his right shoulder there, next to the American flag, of course. But really good to talk to you, Fletcher. You've got a business called Discovered. We'll talk about that in a little while, but first tell us where you are in the States. It's about 4:30 in the afternoon where you are. Where do we find you?
I'm in Surf City, USA, otherwise known as Huntington Beach. So, I imagine there's some surfer Aussies out there. So, anytime you come to town, hit me up and I'll take you to my little beach break. And when I come visit, you got to take me out too.
So Huntington Beach, that's the one where you've got to dodge the pylons from the piers, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. You're right.
It's like adventure surfing.
Yeah, make sure you go right or left depending on which side you're at. But
yeah. Stay away from the pier. Be a good view from up the pier watching people. I've seen people surf under it and around the piers and thrill seekers. But anyway,
I'm not that good.
Me either. So I just love to get started by finding out people's backstories. That's where I always like to start, because there generally is a problem or an experience that you've had in the past that's driven you toward creating a solution, as you have in the hiring space. So tell us a little bit of your background, your backstory, and how you ended up where you are now.
Well, I got to blame it on my Australian father. So I didn't get the accent. Sorry, guys.
No.
Probably would have paid off in my younger years chasing the girls, but I found one and she puts up with me. So, but he was a business coach, and actually spent some time in the remodeling business in his early days as well. But he was the opposite of me. I'm a high D for the disc people out there, and high DI, I guess. And as a young man, I found myself in leadership roles, from student body president to captain of the football team. That's American football. But sorry, guys. And I just found myself in leadership roles, right? I mean, just, I guess with the person, that type of personality, like anybody with this personality probably often found themselves in those roles, for better or worse. I mean, I was not qualified and shouldn't have been in them. Actually, I think, high Ds have their own challenges in leadership. But nonetheless, he really ingrained in me the ideas of like building a team and how important that was. And I gravitated to that component, the importance of having the right people on the team or on the bus, just stuck with me. I wrote a paper at the age of 16. I've thought about this my entire life. I went into leadership roles out of university or college, and I had a really awesome career opportunity to practice this as a leader in a large privately held company who also valued hiring and getting the right people. And we were able to turn that business unit around from last to in the top 5 in the nation out of 100 business units. And I attribute a lot of it to the things that my father taught me about hiring and putting an emphasis on who you hire, doing a great job of training and developing them once you got them on board. And we focused on that more than anything from a leadership perspective. There's lots of things we had to do good, but that was like one of the number one things we focused on. And many of those people to this day, 15, 16 years later, are number 3 in the company, have all moved on to leadership roles, have had very long careers with that organization. And so the proof's in the pudding, now that I'm a little bit older. And that's what I've spent my life thinking about and practicing. When I took this business over 12 years ago, I was 31 and had some imposter syndrome. Malcolm Gladwell person. Imagine, Mick, you're familiar. 10,000 hours of excellence.
Yep.
So I said, nobody's going to listen to me, So I interviewed over 15,000 job candidates and put them through really scientifically best practices in evaluating those candidates. And then I also had to figure out how to find them too, to do that. Right. Mm-hmm. So I put my money where my mouth was, and I had some great clients who came along for the ride and trusted me to figure it out on the fly. And, now we have some really fact and science-backed systems and processes that we teach people.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. We're always trying to bring you information that's going to make your life as a builder much easier. So give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Yeah, that seems like a really young age to start to think about and be into things like team and team dynamics and the importance of the right people in the right seat on the right bus. At 16, I think most other males are thinking about lots of other stuff and and not that. But it obviously puts you in good stead because that whole 10,000 hours, you learn a lot, particularly if you're passionate about something. And I want to ask you about, the DISC stuff. Some people have heard of it, I'm sure. But sort of starting at the start, before you start to look for someone to fill a seat in your bus, are there things that you suggest to people that they need to start to think about as far as the position that they're trying to fill? Are there sort of mistakes that you see people making when they're thinking about who they should hire or what sort of seat on the bus that they need to fill? I'm imagining that the preparation in your own thought process is going to be key to finding the right person eventually.
Yeah, failing to prepare is preparing to fail.
Yeah.
That was like, I don't know, Thomas Edison or somebody smart. Lots of smart people have stolen that quote. And yeah, that's the number one place people fail, right? They go, I need to hire a carpenter or I need to hire a superintendent. And they have a very maybe clear picture of who that person is in their head. And I say that lightly. Clear is usually very ambiguous. It's clear to them until they have to really explain it. And if you stop down and say, well, like, what kind of superintendent am I really looking for? Or, what skills does my new carpenter or plumber or electrician or, whoever office person, what do they really need to have? And, I worked with over 2,000 small business owners, most of them in the small construction space for that matter. And I asked them that question, like, well, how would you define success? What problem does this person solve? And how are you going to measure whether or not they're doing a good job? And that's when the wheels on the bus start to fall off. And that's the first question.
Yeah. Yeah. I imagine, because I've experienced this myself, that hiring people and you've identified what you want them to do. And I just remember this conversation with a mentor of mine. I was putting a team together, and we were having lunch one day with this mentor, and he could tell that I was perturbed. I was a bit pissed off. And He said, "What's going on?" I said, "These bloody people, you know." And he said, "What's going on?" I said, "It's just really frustrating putting this team together." And he said, he asked a really smart question. He said, "What do you expect them to do? Like, what is the outcome that you want them to provide?" And so I told him. And then he asked another really good question. He said, "Are they doing that?" And I said, "Yes, they are." And he said, "Well, what's the problem?" And the problem was, I identified, and he helped me identify, was they weren't doing it the way I would have done it, you know. Yeah. And when we try and hire people, do we fall into the trap of trying to create clones of ourselves where we could probably, if we were smart about it, we could find people that are much better at doing stuff that we do? You know, what are your thoughts all around that?
Can you talk to my wife? Maybe she could come to that same conclusion.
No, we'll put her on after we're finished.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, that's it, right? I mean, beggars can't be choosers, man. If they're delivering the end result, and the result now, if you haven't clearly defined the end result, then okay, then it's a moving target. That's the problem, right? That's why it's such a big problem that people just are unclear about. I mean, there's different types of carpenters, right? Like there's finished carpenters and then there's like framers, right? I don't know. Pick two categories. Like ask a framer to do finished carpentry, he probably sucks at it, right?
Yeah.
Like, and he couldn't probably explain to you how to do a good job at putting crown molding up, for example. Like I don't, you know, like he'd just be like, he'd flounder with that question if that's what you asked him, right? Or so, you know, getting really clear. Look, if the person is doing it the way you define. Now, I think the other problem people run into is core values or culture. Yep. And I really often think it comes down to what I define as attitude and integrity. Are they like, you know, a nice person to work with? And do they have integrity in how they operate? Are they reliable? Do they say what they're going to say they're going to do, or do what they say they're going to do? And don't cheat, lie, steal, you know, that kind of thing. This sounds like pretty basic stuff, but you know, if they're following your core values and do their work with integrity and they're delivering the desired outcome or better, then how they do it doesn't matter.
Yep. Yeah.
So get over it. But then training and onboarding. So that's another place that I start. So the end of the hiring process, which is not over until you're done with training and onboarding your new hire. And that could be, depending on the role, could be 3 to 12 months, maybe even longer in some cases. Start there. If you don't know what's expected of them and can't figure it out because you just maybe haven't really thought through it, well, think about what are they going to do on day one? What should the outcome of their work be in week 1, week 2, month 1, 3, month 6? What should it look like in clear and measurable terms? And again, the soft stuff, like the fuzzy things like attitude or core value match or culture match, make that as quantifiable as possible by clearly defining your core values and then evaluating people in a more as objective as way as possible, like, motivated or shows initiative, rate them on a scale of 1 to 5 and define and defend why you rated them that way, for example, right? So taking subjective and making it more objective, right?
Yeah. So, how important is it, and what solutions do you suggest, or how do you guide people to make sure that they can effectively communicate the purpose, if you like, of the position that they're filling? Because I've had experiences in the past where the new team member was quite upset because they didn't feel like that they were doing a job well, because of their perception of what they thought the priorities were or the purpose was, and it was different to what the boss was thinking, and it just wasn't clearly communicated. So everyone gets frustrated. The person's trying to do what the boss thought that they were asking them to do, and they're not, just because of this I guess communication breakdown. What are some of the resources or the training or the guidance that you give your clients to make sure that they tick that box? Because you can get the right person And then if that bit falls to pieces, you can kind of burn a good team member, and everyone has a bad experience.
Yeah. Well, that's why the trick for me, one trick is define the training and onboarding plan and define what the milestones are and clear and measurable expectations. So that sort of forces you to put that hat on. If you sit down to write a job description, for example, and you're like, this is vague and unclear and I'm really struggling with it. So going through that last step first actually helps you figure that out. But technically it's called a job analysis, and there's just a series of questions. And so I don't know, in the show notes, maybe hopefully you'll share this with folks. It's free if you have the $20 ChatGPT account. So I don't make any money on this. So the plug here is just, I'll call it a free tool for lack of a better term. But I created a GPT that walks you through this everything we're going to talk about and everything we're not going to talk about today. And really the step one is creating a job analysis. And you can answer the questions yourself as the leader or the CEO. The person's direct supervisor you might want to have them answer the questions, but maybe even more ideally, if you have somebody in the role or several people in the role, have them answer the questions. So you might find when you do that the CEO, the direct manager, and the person in the role, all three parties might have a different idea of what good looks like or what the job is. So that's one way to inspect any misalignments and then fix it, right? Get clear if you identify those, right? And then that's the jumping off point for a clear set of measurable or performance-based job description, as we like to call it.
Yeah, perfect. I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. There's one roadblock in your business that, when identified and fixed, a whole bunch of other frustrating problems will disappear at the same time. So much time, effort, and money is thrown at problems in an attempt to fix them that often doesn't fix the problem and just leads to more frustration. And if this cycle continues, it increases stress and just makes running your own business an unenjoyable pain in the ass. And it doesn't have to be that way. Being a business owner can give you more time and financial freedom, and it can be super rewarding if you do it right. The key is to find your unique roadblock, which you're often too close to the action to see yourself. How do I know this? I've been working in peak performance and business coaching for over 3 decades, and with builders specifically for over 10 years, and I see it every day. So I encourage you to take the Builder's Success Scorecard right now. The link to take the scorecard is in the description. It's free. It'll take you about 90 seconds, and you'll have some quality feedback in your inbox before you know it. You mentioned the DISC system, and it's DISC, not a disc that you used to put in your computer for the old people listening to this. And there are a bunch of tools, I guess, that you can use in this space. I've heard of the Herman Meyer Jobby, and then there's something that I was quite inspired by recently was the 6 types of working genius. I love all of that sort of stuff. How important is it to have a tool like the DISC system? And maybe you want to explain what the DISC system is and how it works. But really, why is it important to use a tool like that when you're bringing somebody into the team?
Yeah, so there's 2 types of assessments that are off the shelf that are not like human-led, like interviewing or reference checkings. Those are human-to-human assessments. But integrity, number 1, is it's the second most predictive thing you can use. So using an integrity assessment, it's not quite DISC. Highly recommend using that. But and then general mental ability, and I don't know what the laws are in Australia and in the US. They can get a little dicey because it also has the highest level of adverse impact. So basically, folks that don't come with traditional backgrounds can not score so well. But you find the right one, and it has less. But those 2 types of assessments are the highest predictors of on-the-job performance and retainability, like will they stick around, right? And then DISC is just a is a core kind of personality construct. There's two. DISC is a 4-quadrant, so 4 different personality types. D for dominant, I for influencer, S for steadiness, and C for conscientiousness. And it's a great way to begin to think about how natural preferences and behaviors or inclinations that we all have as humans. And it gives you and everybody else around you a common set of language that you can use to begin to talk about these things and understand how, for example, an eye might behave as a carpenter. They won't behave well, by the way. So that person would rather be sitting here doing this podcast than doing the final finishing touches on your cabinets, right?
Okay.
Talking to nobody, listening to their music all alone, right? And then in the construction world in particular, C's, conscientious people in general, this is not a perfect statement, but across the board in general, high C's are better at work, period.
Mm.
So that is also a predictive lever you can pull is, avoid hiring the rest of them. No, there's a place for D's and I's in the workplace, like sales and leadership, but high C's, especially because the nature of construction work is usually process oriented, even whether it's a manager or a tradesperson, stick with those as the bulk of your workforce, right?
Yeah. I want to talk about your business, Discovered. We'll put the URL in the description so people can go and check it out. But I just want to understand the journey. So somebody that wants some help hiring and I'm a big believer in Dan Sullivan's ask who, not how, learning how to do something versus finding someone who can do it for you is a much better way. So having somebody in your corner who knows all of the challenges that can come with hiring and the cost of getting it wrong and all of that, and obviously someone with lots and lots of experience is really important. So somebody listening to this and they want to have a conversation or find out what you do, can you give us a bit of a sense as to what the journey would be like for somebody like that? They reach out to you. What are the steps? What can they expect and experience?
Yeah, I guess I'm a little old school. Aaron, our client success manager, says we offer service as a software because, hiring is such a complex subject matter. I in the way I'm old school, I just grew up with like human communication. We like support, I'm not a fan of traditional software platforms. It's like, here you go, figure it out on your own. Here's like a knowledge base and good luck, right? Typically we like to, have a deep understanding of the client's problems, what they're doing, how they're currently operating, what they'd like the outcome to be, right? So we're sort of creating our own job description, right? In that journey. And then, then from there is begin to introduce best practices. And so actually all our clients go through like a 12-week indoctrination into all of the 40 best practices in hiring. Now, you don't have to do all 40. There's because some are applicable to certain people for certain reasons. All of them are good ideas and should be considered. But, we literally put people through a masterclass in hiring the moment you become a prospect for us. So it's highly educational, right? And then we begin to say, okay, well, what tools can we use to accelerate the implementation and the execution of as many of these ideas as possible? And that's really what Discovered is. It's like, if you Dan Sullivan, who, not how. I'm a big fan of Who from the Jeff Smarts. Lou Adler. I don't know. I read a lot of the gurus, books on hiring, and studied the science for that matter. Like I'm big on what statistically moves the needle. So I'm reading the scientific journal articles and the IOs out there. Forget the fluff and the third party, and no offense, the coaches I have plenty of coach friends that are phenomenal and know stuff, but I want to know the facts, what actually moves the needle statistically in this. And so our platform supports things that statistically move the needle, and then we teach people those things as we go along that journey. Right.
Yeah. Well, I want to, because I think it's important to give people reasons to do things differently. And having been around and still hang around with lots and lots of builders and have discussions about adding team members, they seem to quite often make the same mistakes, and those mistakes can be costly. And I think when we're having a conversation, I think it's important to help the listener understand that, okay, reaching out to somebody like yourself, there's a cost in time. There's going to be a cost financially as well to invest in your services to get it right. But I just want your experience and perhaps some facts and figures from your past of what it can cost when you get it wrong, because I mean, obviously people don't want to spend money on things that they don't find necessary. But I just find it is so costly when you either make the wrong hire or you rush into hiring, and there's that old saying, hire slow, fire fast, those sorts of things. What have you seen? If we can put the scare into some people about of the mistakes that are made when hiring. If you don't get it right, you don't take your time, you don't do the planning and preparing and gather the experience to make sure that you're doing the very best you can to put the right person in the right place.
Yeah. Well, first of all, getting better at hiring is not as hard as you think it will be.
Right.
It takes a little bit of intentionality and some effort, but it's not like hundreds of hours or anything like that. So and to do the right thing in hiring, it doesn't take you more time. In fact, I believe in hire fast, fire fast. I mean, if you make a mistake, get rid of them quick, right?
Yeah.
But, I put a little spin on the hire slow, fire fast thing. The cost is an opportunity cost. So you really want to think about it more in those terms. And in construction, I think it's fairly easy to calculate. Pick any single role that in there, from a trade to a construction management professional. Those are really the bulk of the people you're dealing with here. And some of them may have salespeople if you're selling, say, siding or roofing or something like that, right? But for the most part, you're dealing with those types. Maybe an estimator, do crappy estimate, don't get the deal. Well, how much was that deal worth? $1 million? All right. Well, you just lost $1 million because your estimator sucks, right? But think about it. I think the harder one people get, say a carpenter. I don't know. We'll use that example again. You hire a bad carpenter, and the guy spends 3 days framing, and then to only find out that he kind of screwed it up. And then you got to bring in your best guy off of another project. So now that project's going to be delayed, say another 2 or 3 days, and you're double paying to get the framing work done because the good guy has to come in and fix what the bad guy did. Right. So start to do your math on that. That's like a $5,000 or $10,000 mistake in a scenario just like that. And then the delay in the project, and then you as the business owner. So those are some sleepless nights and just general angst, and now burnout. Now you're paying your good guy overtime, but he doesn't want your overtime. He just wants to work his 40 hours and go home to his kids and play football with them, right? You're burning everybody out. Everybody's frustrated. And then, 3 months later, your good guy, puts in his notice with you, and you're wondering why. It's because you burn them out because you hired the wrong person. Well, your good guy, to find a good person, A player, well, by the definition of A players, if we follow a curve grading scale, is like only 10% of the people are A players. So to find that guy, it's going to be really a replacement for it hurts. So now you're in a death spiral, right? Now you hire the next foreign body you can to fill that gap. Maybe you have to hire 2 or 3 people to make up for them, and you're treading water, and the cycle goes on and on and on, and you're the one, frustrated, in anguish. I mean, I've been a leader for my entire life, as I mentioned. I've been in leadership roles just about everything I've ever done. Again, they really shouldn't have done that, but they kept throwing me in these roles, and how many times I've had to fire somebody or let them go. And I'm not exactly the most empathetic person in the world here. It keeps me up at night. It bothers me. It takes me days or weeks sometimes to pull the trigger on that, for just because I don't want to do that. Like, nobody wants to have to do that, right?
Yeah.
So
there are many issues that need to be addressed in this space. It can be a minefield, but I love what you said, that it doesn't take as long as you'd think to get good at hiring, and that sort of brings me back to, well, if you've got the right person showing you what you need to do, it's like trying to improve your golf swing all by yourself. That'll take a long time, and it'll probably never happen. You got to get some good coaching and someone looking at your situation and finding out what your specific challenges and issues are to give you the correct direction, I guess, and then you start to practice doing it right and you become good at it. So that's the fast way of doing it. So people reaching out to you, you've got the Australian flag in the background. We know the connection is through your father. Father was Australian, and you're in Huntington Beach in the USA. You do work with builders in Australia, I'm led to believe. So people can reach out to you and have that conversation with you, even though you're halfway around the world.
Yeah, I get up early, and I'm here, this time of day, right? So I think what you say is about 11 o'clock, when we're going on noon for you. So unless you're in Perth or Western Australia, then that's kind of a tougher time zone for us. But the Eastern side, I think we cross paths enough, so we find time to connect with our friends down under, and the tools are great, and we're always happy to help. And I'm sure you guys do a lot of great things. Again, we partner with a lot of coaches, like like yourself, Mick, and so there's always opportunities to share good ideas. So
yeah, fantastic. I love talking about this sort of stuff, particularly when it can be something that can make such a massive difference just with a few tweaks and shifts and refinements, and can be profoundly effective in a business. It's so great to work when the team is gelling and everything's working, and it can be an absolute nightmare when you've just got one wrong person in the wrong place or in the team. It can be incredibly damaging. So like you said before we pressed the go button, that you could talk about this quote unquote forever. And I could talk about it for a long time as well. I find it a fascinating subject. So I just wanted to thank you for taking the time late in your afternoon where you are to jump on the podcast, share your knowledge. And it's great to know that there are people out there doing this sort of stuff to help people in the building industry enjoy their business, make their business better, have better experiences for everyone involved. So appreciate you putting the time aside to jump on the podcast. Been terrific.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mick.
Been great. Thanks. It was a pleasure to meet. And so I hope this got you thinking. We're about to, and depending on when you hear this, we may have already had the Christmas break, but when we're at the time of recording, we're sort of moving into Christmas, and it might be time just to start to think about these things. Have I got the right people in the right seats on the bus? Are we taking advantage of their personality, their skills, all of that sort of stuff? Because thinking about this can have a profound effect on how well the team performs together, how everyone enjoys their day. And when people are enjoying working with each other and there's good communication and there's good support and good systems, the productivity just can go through the roof, and all sorts of other advantages as well with your business. So it's absolutely worth thinking about. Reach out, have a chat to Fletcher. Get him out of bed early, keep him up late, whatever needs to happen to have that discussion. But we'll put all of the links in the description, so all you need to do is click and reach out and have that conversation. And if you do, I'd love to hear how you went. Give us some feedback. So that's it for this episode of the Toolshed podcast. We'll be back with another episode. Before you know it, I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. That is all. I'm out. Bye for now.
You've been listening to The Tool Shed. If this podcast struck a chord with you, make sure you spread the word by sharing it with your mates in the building industry. We love your help to make the building industry better for everyone involved.